the Nightfarers. The will to cross the endless night and fight on. Till every shred of their being is ground away.
Guys, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't think I've ever seen the gaming world this split over a single title. Some players are climbing the mountains to shout how much they love it. Others, ready to throw off the nearest cliff. One camp's calling it a $40 mod, while the others yelling, "Cash grab!" from the rooftops. But no matter where you land, Elden Ring, Nightreign, it's pulling reactions from every corner of the map, and trust me, some of that heat is coming from things most players haven't even discovered yet. And yeah, when you compare Nightreign to something like Duskbloods, it starts to make sense. This isn't just another entry in the FromSoft playbook, it's a curveball, a pivot, and for longtime fans, that can feel like walking into a floodgate without knowing what a buzz is behind it. Especially after the monster success FromSoft has had recently, it's only natural that anything this different sends up some red flags. Smash that like button like it's a weak spot glowing on a late game boss. You know the one that's about to explode. These games throw in mechanics and themes that feel totally alien to the usual FromSoft formula. And that alone is enough to shake up the fan base. I mean, we're talking about some of the most dedicated player communities in gaming. Elden Ring? Massive audience. Dark Souls? Legendary fan loyalty. So yeah, when a game like Nightreign rolls in with this many curveballs, it's bound to split that crowd straight down the middle. Now, I've played it. I've had a lot of fun. But let me be clear. This isn't a blind hype train. I've got my share of criticisms, and there are real concerns I'll be diving into. But stepping back from just gameplay, there's something industry shifting about this title. This is a non-live service multiplayer game dropping from a AAA studio in 2025, and that's almost unheard of. It's like finding a mimic chest that's actually just loot. It's weird, rare, and kinda exciting. So here's what we're diving into today. Stuff most people aren't even talking about with this game. I wanna break down what Elden Ring Nightreign is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. We're going deep on player reception, the raw data behind the hype, and what this could mean from FromSoft's future trajectory. Because trust me, there's more at play here than just combat system and graphics. I figured Nightreign would do well, but I did not expect this. Over 300,000 concurrent players on day one, holding strong through the weekend, over 2 million units sold under 24 hours. That's a power move, especially for a weird experimental spin-off with polarizing feedback. Critically, sitting on a 77 Metacritic, 80 on OpenCritic. Not a knockout, but not a failure either. Steam reviews went from mixed to mostly positive after a quick patch dropped and the dust settled. And honestly, the only reason it feels this divisive is because of what came before. Elden Ring was a titan. Nearly 30 million copies sold and already locked in as one of the most celebrated games of the decade. So yeah, anything short of GOAT tier is gonna look mid by comparison. And its core, Nightreign is still unmistakably FromSoft. The way combat, the haunting score, that signature boss design, the drip-worthy gear, the heavy, oppressive atmosphere, it's all still there. It feels like home until it doesn't. Because layered on top of that familiar base are mechanics that feel to some fans like a total betrayal. You've got a shrinking zones like in Fortnite or Warzone, faster pacing, no fall damage, you can spirit jump across the map or ride into battle on a spectral hawk like it's a fantasy battle royale. And structurally, it's a rogue-like boss rush with barely any persistence. That's a wild thing to slap the Elden Ring name on. So yeah, I get the pushback. If you're the kind of player who lives for the deliberate, tight, handcrafted design of Souls games, this probably feels like it was never meant for you. And when you add in all these modern elements that have become Red flags like live service burnout, monetization creep, and trend chasing, it's no wonder players are on edge. Nightreign doesn't just feel different, it feels like a signal flare. When people see a game like Nightreign or even FromSoft's next wildcard, Duskbloods, you can feel the panic set in. The comparisons start flying, and yeah, they're thinking BioWare. A studio once revered for its deep, character-driven RPGs, suddenly chasing shared world shooters, multiplayer gimmicks, and live service disasters like Anthem, a game they had no business making. That pivot didn't just flop, it obliterated their rep. So now, every time a beloved studio starts stepping outside its lane, players brace for impact. Because we've read this chapter before, and it usually ends in heartbreak. So trust me, I get the skepticism. The gaming industry has conditioned us to flinch at innovation. Every creative pivot is suspect. Every twist the formula feels like a corporate decision dressed up in edgy trailers. And after getting burned again and again, paranoia becomes self-defense. But here's the thing. I genuinely believe Nightreign, from a business and design perspective, is being massively misunderstood. And that misunderstanding could be hiding something a lot more interesting. What most people don't realize, and honestly, FromSoft should have put this front and center, is that Nightreign was never meant to be your standard FromSoft game. And sure, a lot of us felt that instinctively, but here's the detail that slipped under the radar. This wasn't directed by Miyazaki. This isn't some major pillar in the studio's long-term vision. Well, okay, maybe it kinda is, but at its heart, this was always a test run. A low-stakes experiment led by Yunya Ishizaki, a first-time director who's been quietly shaping the bones of FromSoft's greatest hits for more than a decade. He started back on the original Dark Souls in 2011 as a level designer. Then he leveled up. Leveling up at Level Up Gaming, working on a level and battle design for Bloodborne, and eventually becoming the combat designer for Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring. Some of the most iconic fights and gameplay moments in FromSoft history, this guy helped build them. Nightreign is his moment, a smaller, safer shot at the director's chair. It reuses a ton of Soulsborne assets, especially from Elden Ring, was developed in under 3 years and built on a budget that's tiny by AAA standards. That $40 price tag, it's not random, it tells you everything you need to know. If you take a step back and really look at this project, everything about it screams insulation and risk management. Nightreign isn't just a game, it's a controlled, creative sandbox, built with the quiet understanding that it might not hit, but it might. That it might even flop, but it might. And here's the kicker. Miyazaki himself basically said this is an interview with The Guardian last year. He openly admitted they were preparing for failure, not in a cynical way, but in a way that reflects an evolving studio culture. Over that values learning over perfection, even at the top. In the article titled The Game Design Secrets of Elden Ring's Hidetaka Miyazaki, written by Kessa McDonald, Miyazaki talks about passing his design knowledge down through FromSoft's younger developers. She wrote, Miyazaki is an extremely hands-on director, but he has also been attempting to pass down his knowledge and artistic approach to others at From Software in the 10 years that he's been its president, ensuring that they too have room to fail. And Miyazaki added, budgets, scale, scope, everything grown to a point where room for failure isn't tolerated like it used to be. From Software has its own way of hedging risks. That is exactly what Nightreign represents, a pocket of failure that was allowed to exist, so that a racing director could take the wheel and the studio could grow its talent without gambling the whole kingdom. Miyazaki straight up called Elden Ring a turning point from software. Before and after Elden Ring, there's going to be a clear difference. That's what he said. And when you stack that quote next to Nightreign and Duskbloods, the picture starts to take shape. You don't even need to read between the lines. This is the strategy. These smaller, stranger, experimental titles, they're not mistakes. They're intentional stepping stones. Especially when you revisit that one line, you have to find the right project to allow for failure, smaller in scope or scale, or a module of something bigger. That's not vague. That's a blueprint, and when you frame Nightreign under that lens, it clicks. It was never meant to be the next Elden Ring. How could it? It was a proving ground, a place where young directors could be challenged, try bold ideas, maybe even stumble and come out stronger. That's not failure. That's a growth mechanic, the kind FromSoft has now built into their own development loop. Yunya Ishizaki is that young game director. Nightreign is that small self-contained project, one that smartly reuses assets from previous games that keeps the stakes low. And Duskbloods, that's the next phase, an upcoming PvE extraction game exclusively being built for Nintendo, likely funded by Nintendo too. And when you look at it through the lens of what Nightreign has already experimented with, zone closures, co-op scaling, faster traversal randomized gear, you start to realize these games aren't random one-offs. They're sequential steps into a broader evolution. And what's wild is, this isn't even a new tactic from FromSoft. They've done this before. Look at Armored Core 6. That game was just strategic. Mech games, still niche, still risky. But FromSoft went for it anyway. It was built with less than half the budget of Elden Ring and directed by Masaru Yamamura, another longtime dev finally stepping into the director's chair. And yeah, while AC6 is widely seen as a win today, part of why it landed so well is because expectations were tempered. No one was waiting for that to be the next Elden Ring. Most of that audience didn't even show up. It sold 3 million, not 30. But for the studio, that was a measured win. The risk was contained, the new blood got their shot, and the brand expanded without overextending. Say what you want about the final product of this strategy, but from a business perspective, this is some of the smartest project manager we've seen from any AAA studio in years. Most publishers, they don't hedge. They go all in, betting the house on reputation, on hype, on industry trends. And when that bet misses, it's brutal. The whole house is on fire. Look at BioWare with Anthem, Rocksteady with Suicide Squad, Arcane with Redfall, Crystal Dynamics with Marvel's Avengers. No lifeline, no fallback, just a leap of faith off a cliff. And it's the devs who hit the rock bottom. And it's not even just live service that's wrecking teams anymore. Sometimes it's the scale, the timing, or just a wrong project pitched at the wrong moment. But FromSoft, they're playing it smarter. This isn't just caution, it's sustainability. They're building a pipeline, and the most brilliant part is what it admits quietly. Miyazaki can't and shouldn't be the core of everything forever. If FromSoft wants to evolve, if it wants to last, it has to pass the torch. It has to trust the next wave. And like Miyazaki said, you have to carve out space for people to fail. That's not just a strategy, that's leadership. And the wild thing is, this is the same kind of bet they took on Miyazaki himself. Way back when Sony funded Demon's Souls, he was just the Armored Core guy, grinding behind the scenes, slowly climbing the ranks until someone gave him a shot. And now, he's paying that forward. He's building the same ladder for the next generation. That's not a step back. That's the clearest sign of a studio that's actually thinking long term. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you already know one of my biggest gripes with AAA studios is the complete lack of strong leadership. But what FromSoft's doing right now, that's how you build it. They know Miyazaki's a powerhouse, and instead of clinging to him forever, they're passing down the blueprint. They're making sure the knowledge, the instincts, the vision, the rawness, life, it's live on even when he eventually steps aside. And honestly, this is something every studio needs to do. I've told you guys this before. Stop obsessing over the studio name or the franchise title. Start looking at the director. Hideo Kojima, for instance. Goodness! 9 times out of 10, that's where the magic comes from. Because let's be real, they're the ones leading the army. Now, That doesn't mean great directors can't fail. Of course they can. They're human. But they're the glue, they're the compass. Their leadership is what brings everything together. You take them out of the equation and the results speak for themselves. Casey Hudson leaves BioWare after Mass Effect 3. We get Andromeda. Bruce Starley helps us shape The Last of Us Part 1, then steps away and Part 2 becomes Neil Druckmann's Solo Vision. World of Warcraft post-Cataclysm, completely different leadership structure. That game didn't just update, it transformed. And not always for the better. 9 times out of 10, when a game misses the mark, when it feels off or flat, it's not just mechanics, it's direction. That's why I always tell players, dig deeper. Track the people, not just the titles. That's how you become a smarter gamer, an educated consumer. And as for Nightreign and eventually Duskbloods, opinions will vary. That's fair. But personally, I respect the heck out of this approach. Measured risk, internal growth, a studio putting its faith in its people. There's this quote I love from J.K. Rowling. It's impossible to live life without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all. And in that case, you've already failed by default. FromSoft fully understands that if they wanted to print money, they could have just dropped another Dark Souls tomorrow. And let's be real, they probably will at some point. But they also know that if they want the studio to have any kind of long-term future, they need to experiment. They need to give their junior directors real opportunities because Miyazaki can't lead every project forever. And he shouldn't have to. This is where expectations matter. Not everything is going to be a genre-defining masterpiece, and that's okay. Studios evolve, teams rotate, and not every release is meant to be a mic drop moment. But for me, I don't think Nightreign is a miss at all. I've played it, I've enjoyed it. Yeah, I've got criticisms, and we'll break those down. But the fact that it's a multiplayer experience without live service hooks, that's the kind of move I want to see more of in AAA. It feels focused, it feels self-contained, and most importantly, it feels right. I've put a solid chunk of time into Nightreign, and I feel like I've seen most of what players are praising, and most of what's frustrating them. But before we break down the details, let me just say this up front. Dang it, this game feels good to play. The movement is incredibly fluid in a way that FromSoft rarely leans into the outside of games like Sekiro or Armored Core. The traversal is fast, reactive, and almost arcade-like. Vaulting over walls, climbing terrain, chaining jumps with ease, it all feels so smooth now, especially after that recent patch. And honestly, there's something genuinely exhilarating about moving this quickly in a Souls-style game. It changes the rhythm. It shakes the formula, and in the best moments, it almost makes you forget this came from the same studio that made you inch through Blighttown like a terrified snail. Nightreign just kind of lets you go, and even with all the new systems it introduces, it still feels unmistakably Elden Ring at its core. The world design, the music, the tone, the enemy variety, the combat, it's all there. The structures, the spatial layouts, they scream From Software. And because so much of that foundation is familiar, the learning curve, practically non-existent. If you played Elden Ring before, you can jump into this with zero friction. That instant familiarity is one of the game's biggest strengths. It keeps the bar of entry low without ever dumbing anything down. The gameplay loop is just fun, plain and simple. And when you bring co-op into the mix, whoo, it snaps into place. Fully co-op boss fights with 2 other players, especially when you're actually in voice, bring a whole new kind of energy. If you got a squad, you're going to see how real-time coordination creates dynamic fights. One player can draw aggro, another can provide range support, and roles shift organically throughout the encounter. It's flexible, reactive, and honestly way more satisfying than I expected. For the first time, it feels like an Elden Ring style MMO might not be a crazy idea, because this kind of action combat system, it got me and Joe sweating. It might actually be able to carry it. I've always had a soft spot for Souls-like that loosen that grip a bit. Games that lets you breathe, that don't demand 100% laser focus every single second, and Nightreign fits that mold beautifully. It's faster paced, session based, fully co-op, and most importantly, it's designed to respect your time without dumbing down the experience. One thing that really surprised me, the progression system. I didn't expect much, but it actually caught me off guard in the best way. The way the world evolves between run adds genuine replay value. Beat the first major boss and suddenly boom, there's a giant crater splitting the map in half. Stronger enemies spawn inside, and there's a secret upgrade waiting at the bottom. Other times you'll enter a run to find a scarlet forest overtaking half the zone, completely reshaping the landscape and forcing you to rethink your whole route. These changes aren't just pretty environmental swaps, they directly affect gameplay. You have to replan your path, shift your priorities, and adapt your entire strategy. It's got that rogue-like, chaotic unpredictability, but layered with a world-building way that only FromSoft really knows how to bring. The Remembrance quests? Genuinely cool. Not only are you taking down these Night Lord bosses, but you're also chasing character-specific storylines to recover their lost memories. And when you do, you unlock some of the best rewards in the game. But more than that, these quests are where the game's roguelike mechanics really shine. Each completed remembrance gives you a chalice, and that chalice lets you customize your relic loadout before each run. I know. It's one of the few systems that offers real agency, and honestly, I think it's brilliant. Well, of course, I've got complaints, and one of them is downright baffling. How do you release a co-op first game in 2025 without crossplay? Or even basic multiplayer features like, what the heck, FromSoft? There's no in-game voice chat, no text communication. You can play solo or in trios, but not duos, for no discernible reason. And that's a real issue because Nightreign demands coordination. Roles matter. Bosses hit hard. You need to plan. You need to communicate. You need to know what the team is doing before your run collapses. And right now, unless you're with friends in voice, just calling him while holding your controller, every match with strangers feels like a complete gamble. One game, it all clicks. Someone's marking the map, calling shots, you're slicing through bosses like a dream. Sometimes it clicks. You get a real co-op experience, but then suddenly, you're stuck with a squad that's getting wiped by low-tier mobs and there's nothing you can do. No way you can alert them. No way you can pull out their hair and say, hey! Since players can't respawn endlessly until someone dies to the main boss, there's no true fail state, no reset, just a wasted run. A basic voice or text chat system would solve this. Seriously, just something. But without it, you're locked in for 30 minutes hoping strangers get it together. 9 times out of 10, they don't. And speaking of knowing where to go and what to grab during a run, while some of Nightreign's systems are solid, the actual roguelike mechanics on the map are shockingly weak. And listen, roguelikes are my go-to genre. I've dumped hundreds of hours into Risk of Rain 2, Hades, Balatro, Slay the Spire, and a whole graveyard of other games. What makes those games sing is the way each run feels intentional. You build something, you adapt. It's strategy layered on top of choice. Take Hades. You pick a weapon, then every single room pushes you forward with clear progression, god powers, boons, currency, trade-offs. You reroll, you stack synergies, and you sculpt a run. It's not just about power, it's about expression. But Nightreign, it doesn't give you that. Powers get tossed at you randomly with no synergy, no pathing, no control. It's RNG chaos in the worst way, scattered, incoherent, disconnected from the actual rhythm of your gameplay. Yeah, there's a map filter. You can try to hunt for specific weapons, passives, consumables, but it barely works. Most of what you'll find are just weapons, and stacking a few with the same status effect, you tiny boost the damage or status chance. That's it. Maybe you grab a health buff, a stamina boost, or some weird farming passive, but almost none of it ever falls back into a cohesive build. It's noise, not strategy. Most of the actual build crafting in Nightreign doesn't happen during the run. It happens before it. Through relics and remembrances, both of which are permanent unlocks, but here's the catch. That system is buried behind FromSoft's signature esoteric world building and cryptic quest design. Most players won't even realize there's a quest log tucked away in the Keep's journal. They'll assume it's just more lore, and if you're not into lore, you'll probably skip it entirely. I've done it. You've done it. So unless someone tells you directly or you stumble across a video like this, you're missing out on a whole progression system. If you never open that menu, you'll have no clue that a key piece of the game's depth is locked behind that vague UI. Once you're actually inside a run, you're basically scavenging. Maybe you get lucky and find a weapon with the right element, if it's even available on the map that cycle. Or maybe it just happens to line up with your team's route. You'll hit a few shrines of Abaraka, upgrade some flasks, and grab some smithing stones or minor buffs along the way. But none of it feels like it's truly fitting into your build. There's no real synergy, no deliberate loop, just a pile of disconnected systems with nothing solid tying it all together. And yet, in spite of all of that, I still genuinely enjoy playing Nightreign. The movement, the combat, the boss encounters, the speed. There's a momentum here that just clicks. It's fast, fluid, and fun. But if I'm being honest, what really keeps the whole experience grounded is the fact that it's built on top of Elden Ring's framework. It reuses its world, its design, language, its mechanical foundation, and that foundation is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. The controls feel sharp. The world is instantly familiar, and the core soul system are still very much alive here. And that's not a bad thing, because Nightreign is exactly what it set out to be, an experimental spin-off from FromSoft. A game made on a smaller budget, led by a new director trying out something different. And yeah, some of the elements feel rough, really rough, but others, they shine. And for $40 fully co-op and no microtransactions and no live service bloat, that's rare. Actually, that's almost unthinkable in today's AAA space. We've gotten used to battle passes, paywalls, and grindy monetized loops. But Nightreign just shows up, lets you play, and earns your time, not your wallet. Everything you earn in Nightreign, you earn it by actually playing the game. Imagine that. What a wild, almost foreign concept in 2025. Skins, emotes, relics, chalices, all purchased with Merc. A currency you earn only by completing runs. There's no cash shop, no premium shortcuts, no splash screen shoving limited FaceTime offers in your face, no battle pass taken away in the corner like a doomsday clock for your enjoyment. You just play, and you get rewarded. That alone feels incredible. I don't think a lot of studios understand how much damage they've done to gaming culture, or worse, maybe they just don't care. Sure, the industry's profited, but the cost has been a more cynical, hostile, price-sensitive player base. People don't trust the studios anymore, and without balance, without fair offerings, that system is going to collapse. Nightreign is that fair offering. And that's how I hope people start to see it. Yeah, the concerns are valid, whether it's the tone, the direction, or the looming question of what Duskbloods might bring. But Nightreign is exactly the kind of project I want more of. A complete co-op game, no live service hooks, fairly priced and built with intention, not obligation. A decade ago, this was normal. We bought expansions. We played multiplayer because it was fun, not because of FOMO, not because of our XP bar was running out of time. And I want us to get back to that. I want studios to start treating players like people again. And for all of its faults, Nightreign gets that part right. FromSoft took a massive IP, reused its asset, built something new, and did it quickly, affordably and respectfully. This game probably didn't even cost $50 million to make. I'd be shocked if it hasn't already paid for itself, and in doing that, FromSoft managed to give new leadership real experience, test future mechanics, and deliver something their fanbase could just play and enjoy, no strings attached. But I think this one is complicated. From both the player and developer side, it's a tricky situation. FromSoft has been riding an insane wave of success these past few years, and we all benefit from that. We got incredible games, but Nightreign is different. This is a foreign territory for them and for a lot of players. It's not a traditional AAA behemoth. It feels more AA, more experimental, more restrained, and that's going to shift how people view it, whether consciously or not. And look, some players out there genuinely don't want this game to succeed. Get it. Or Dustbloods when it arrives. Because if multiplayer games do well for FromSoft, there's a fear they'll stop focusing on single player epics. And that's a valid concern. We've seen it happen before. Studios chase what sells and the identity gets lost. So yeah, some hesitation, totally understandable. But from the developer side, that's gotta be frustrating. You spend years building a reputation, and the moment you step out of your comfort zone, your audience wants to drag you back in line. It's like saying, nope, stay in your lane. From a business angle though, I'm kind of in awe. Miyazaki lays down the early concept phase of Armored Core 6, hands it off to a new director, and boom, great game. Makes its money back, earns praise from both critics and fans. Then he gives a set of repurposed assets to another dev, says make a co-op game, and that turns out pretty solid too. People enjoy it, it sells well, no live service, no bloat, and already a proof of concept for what's coming in Dustbloods. And since Dustbloods is a Nintendo exclusive, Nintendo's footing the bill, which means FromSoft's risk is practically zero. Meanwhile, they're quietly working on whatever next behind the curtain. Likely the next Dark Souls or something of that scale. They've released 3 games in quick succession, almost all of them well received, and they've done it with financial control, leadership development, and creative experimentation. From where I'm sitting, they're playing this game on New Game Plus difficulty and still winning. But yeah, if anyone in this industry is worth their salt, they should be paying very close attention to what FromSoft is doing. Not every swing is going to connect. Some games are going to miss. That's just the nature of the beast, especially when you're trying to build something new. But even with those risks, FromSoft is building for the future, and I honestly think it's going to pay off. Historically, they've navigated the last few years with surgical precision. And unless something major changes, I think they'll keep winning, both creatively and commercially. Personally, I've had a ton of fun with Nightreign. There's just something satisfying about the act of playing it, especially in co-op. I'm telling you now, don't go in solo. That way lies madness. I genuinely hope the game grows. I hope it finds its footing. The patch support so far has been solid, especially the vaulting fix. Smooth now, almost flawless. And if they keep tweaking it and keep listening, I think Nightreign has a real shot at sticking around. What's your take? Should FromSoft keep experimenting like this or focus on single player epics? And how would you improve Nightreign if you were part of the developing team? Hit that like button like it's the last revive before a what? Don't let the squad down, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and if you're ready for your next side quest, we've got more breakdowns, bold takes, and brutally honest reviews waiting in the shadows. This is Level Up Gaming, where gamers rise together. I'll see you in the next one.